Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Sagar Dave, a true blue Punekar born and raised in Pune, India. A software engineer by qualification, the creative bug got the better of him and he pivoted to pursue a career in digital media. Gardening, art, animals, and writing top the list of his favorites. Sagar dabbled into terrarium making just before the pandemic hit, and soon it became a passion, one that got him through the periods of isolation and uncertainty, he says. A digital strategist on weekdays, weekends are spent building his hobby turned business, Jungle in a Jar, and working on a new pet project every few weeks. His mantra in life is patience is courage, and strongly believes that if it is not the ending you wanted, then the story isn't over yet. Welcome, Sagar, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thanks, Milind. It's a pleasure to be here and talking to you. Thanks for inviting me.
I like the way you kind of ended your introduction, saying that if it is not the ending you wanted, then the story isn't over yet. And I would like to believe that your story is just beginning.
Absolutely. I think every day is a new beginning and it's the first day of the rest of your life. So you actually have the power to write what you want, do what you want, change your own fortune. Uh, Being stuck in the past can be the most debilitating thing that you can do to yourself. That's what I believe. It takes a little bit of courage and a lot of, I would say, enthusiasm to get up every morning and say, you know what, today I am going to think about flying and maybe take off, maybe not, but I'm going to think about it. And that's important. I believe it's important.
So broadly, your story, as I see it, very briefly, the way I introduced you, traverses around being a software engineer,
Right.
then a digital media specialist or a practitioner, and a terrarium maker. So if we were to say that these are the three parts of a many-part story
Right.
called Sagar Dave,
Right.
which of the three parts do you get pulled towards more, at least now?
Uh, right now, I would say that it's mostly revolving around plants.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say terrarium making is something that I gravitate towards, if you can put it that way. Because there are two aspects to it, right? There's one thing that you need to do, there's one thing that you have to do, and then there's one thing that you really want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do is you need to earn a living to kind of get through life as well, to do things that you want. And that is where the whole concept of turning my hobby, which is terrarium making, I call it Jungle in a Jar. And there's a story behind that as well. I hope you ask me what it is at some point.
Of course.
That is where it was born because it's an expensive hobby to have, to be honest, in the sense that the materials cost, the plants cost a lot of money, and very often they wouldn't survive certain weathers or certain movement, and then you have to redo it. So to be honest, they need a lot of attention, and for that, I need a lot of time. With time also comes expenses like materials and stuff. That's why it's important that I convert that into a little business where I can make and sell, make and teach as well, so that I can fuel it with its own byproducts, if I can put it. Yeah.
COVID in some ways, I mean, there is this whole horrible dark side to the pandemic where
Right.
there are millions of lives, unfortunately, that have been lost globally to this pandemic. But in many ways, it has also been a blessing to mankind in disguise, because there were many things that many people wanted to do in life, and just because they are isolated, locked down at home, people took to experimenting and trying their hands in various things that they always wanted to do but never. And it seems that's how terrariums happened to you as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an important factor. Yes, it did play. It was that push that the pandemic kind of provided to delve deeper into something that you're already passionate about, but don't have the time to do, because everyone was so, I don't know, like in a shell almost. and it was important to find something that gave you a sense of certainty, a sense of belonging, a sense of control,
A sense of anchoring.
and sense of anchoring. Yes, you when there's a storm, that is the most important thing that one can do, right?
Correct.
You drop
Correct.
your anchor as soon as possible, ground yourself to the seabed,
Correct.
and wait for the storm to pass.
Correct.
But while that's happening, if you have something interesting to do, that's even more entertaining. So that's how things developed. Yeah.
So, pardon my saying this. I'm a bit naive as far as Terrarium is concerned.
Okay.
I mean, you're probably one of the very, very few people in my life that I have actually met
Right.
who is making terrarium making as a way of life.
Right.
I mean, I remember I've seen terrariums in some bars and cafes,
Right.
and I've enjoyed that. I've actually taken photographs of theirs. Never knew that they were called terrarium then.
Right.
But why don't you just walk us through the science and art, if I can use that word,
Absolutely.
of terrarium making, and what is it about, and what is the underlying philosophy behind all this? Because I don't think it's just getting a jungle in a jar. It's something more than that, I would like to believe.
Absolutely. There are a lot of aspects related to terrariums, to be honest. And science, of course, is at the core of it. If you don't understand how certain things work scientifically in terms of the layers of the earth, and how water percolates, how the water cycle works, it's difficult to understand how a terrarium works. On the other hand, if you understand how a terrarium works, it might be easier for you to understand how the earth works. When we say aquarium, it's very easy for people to understand what it means, right? Like,
Sure.
it's an imitation of what life is in water.
Correct.
Similarly, a terrarium, terra is land, so it's an imitation of how the earth is. So, to sum it up, I would say a terrarium, a closed one, is a biosphere. So it's a world in its own. Every day a water cycle happens where the water that was put in once and the container was sealed will come on the top. So essentially it consists of three things. You have layers of soil, you have your layers of plantation, vegetation inside, and you have little creepy crawlies that live inside. And these three things establish an equilibrium, and that is what keeps your terrarium alive. So plants in a jar that keep watering themselves every single day.
What do you mean by watering themselves? You don't have to water them.
No, once your container has established an equilibrium, no more water should be added to it.
How do I know that the equilibrium point has been reached?
That is something that you will understand over time, because the first time you water a terrarium, you underwater it a little bit and then you seal it up. You put like a cling wrap on top, or you close the container. And over a period of time, maybe a week, you will realize that if your plants look dehydrated, if they are, withering a little bit, then you add a little bit more water. And you keep doing that till the perfection is reached. Now, I, of course, can figure that out in the first go now.
Correct.
And that is because I have failed multiple times. And that is what I always tell people who want to do anything, is that keep failing, because there's a lot more to learn from when you fail than when you succeed.
You learned the hard way.
Absolutely.
And how hard was the way?
Very expensive is what I can say. It was very, very expensive.
Okay.
So, if you water the terrarium too much, the plants rot.
Okay.
If you water it too less, the plants will wither.
Yes.
Sometimes there are infestations, some sort of insect, it overgrows or whatever. So the health of a terrarium is determined by how much it smells like a forest. So when you open the container and you take a little...
And this is a glass container, I
It's
presume?
always a glass container, yes, because natural light needs to get in. If not natural light, artificial light is also okay. LED bulbs are absolutely fine for it, yeah. So when you open it and you smell it, you know if it's healthy or not, It should smell like a forest.
So you learned the hard way, you made tons of mistakes. What kept you going?
I think it's that spirit where you feel like, if someone else can do it, so can I. I just have to figure out how.
Okay.
Yeah, rather than, at one point thinking that, it's not something I can do. I am passionate about plants, and it's important that, when you understand the theory, it's very important to put it into practice. And that is what kept me going. I wanted to do it and that's it.
And where does the passion for plants come from?
I think it has a lot to do with growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up around mostly grandmothers because my mother was a single mother, and she was out a lot. So I think from both sides of my family, my grandmothers have always been people who have been doing stuff in the garden. So I wouldn't want to credit genetics alone for it,
Sure.
but I also think it was an internal need to be in nature, wanting to touch soil. I love touching soil, all sorts of mud, anything to do with tactile features. I love doing that.
So as a kiddo, you must have rolled.
Yeah,
over in the
absolutely,
garden.
absolutely. For me, digging, I love digging as well.
Okay.
Digging, burying things. I do it till date.
Okay.
I like, tinkering around in the garden sometimes, cutting something, putting it in the ground, seeing if it grows. So for me, seeing if something grows is an important aspect about gardening. So once a plant is, has grown and, it has flowered and it has got all, I like to give it away to friends and family. What I like to do is to keep a little part of it and propagate that and see how it propagates. So I think it's a mix of science and the love for nature.
And when you term it as a jungle in a jar,
Right.
What's the jungle about? It's a small little jar.
Right.
I don't know what the dimensions could be. What?
Around 5 inches width at least.
Okay.
It could be as small as 1 inch as well, but I prefer to have 5 inches so my hand can go inside.
So how can what grows in that little jar,
Uh-huh.
which is so miniature, why do we call it a jungle?
The term jungle comes from it being like a rainforest, because every day there's a water cycle that happens. So
Say more.
So when you water it first, the lowermost layer is that of gravel. So the water kind of goes there and sits there.
So little
Right.
pebbles sitting there.
Right, absolutely. So it is like a reservoir of water right there.
Okay.
Then it has layers of sand and of charcoal, and then you can add more layers, but basic layers of sand, charcoal, moss, and soil.
Why charcoal?
Because charcoal has this fantastic property where it kind of cleans everything that passes through it. Like we use our water purifying systems, they use activated charcoal, right?
Correct.
Absolutely the same principle. In our olden India, we used to use charcoal to clean utensils when water wasn't available.
Correct.
And they would come out sparkling clean. And
Correct.
nowadays they're using charcoal in your toothpaste and
True.
your face masks and face washes. It does exactly the same thing. It does the same thing in the layers of earth.
Okay.
So it kind of attracts the toxins and lets cleaner water through it.
Okay.
And that's important because you have a closed system, and it's very, very susceptible to any sort of changes in the environment, temperature, infestations, etc. So having the ability to clean that water and recycle it, so the water that goes through the layer of charcoal settles at the bottom. The next morning it'll go up in the form of the capillary effect, as you call it. It'll evaporate a little bit, settle onto the cool walls of the jar, and trickle back into the soil. That's how the cycle happens every single day, just like your water cycle in nature.
But then how does the plant breathe if the jar is sealed then?
So, little trivia thing here is that
Sure.
most plants will photosynthesize during the day, but they respire just like us during the night.
Mm-hmm.
So at night they do give out carbon dioxide, and also general activity that's happening in the soil produces other gases as well, like decomposing and dead matter will give out nitrogen, and there'll be methane and stuff like that. So it will eventually mimic how Earth is.
Then on another plane, another scale, Sagar,
Mhm.
I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
aren't you and I
Mm-hmm.
and everybody who inhabits this planet Earth
Mm-hmm.
is actually in a giant terrarium?
Absolutely.
I mean, because you have this huge, massive Earth, 6,000 kilometers of radius, I think,
Yeah.
and then covered by an atmosphere which is roughly 200 odd kilometers.
Yeah.
It's a bubble by itself
It is.
in a vacuum of universe where there
Absolutely.
is nothing out there. So,
Absolutely.
So aren't we living in our own terrariums?
Absolutely. And that's why I say it's essential that everybody understands and knows how terrariums work, because when we talk about climate change,
Yes.
right? And if you give me a little time to talk about that.
No, please go ahead.
When you talk about climate change, if you are okay with letting go of one of your terrariums, you make it, let it stay alive for a couple of days, and then place it in direct sunlight for a couple of hours. The next day you'll see that your plants are dying, your water balance is now completely destroyed, and you essentially what you have done is that you have created, it's a greenhouse effect, right? Because it's a closed jar with air inside, water inside, and plants inside, and you're not letting that air out. So it almost becomes steam, and your plants are going to get cooked inside. So looking at that, you can kind of imagine that if we allow our Earth's temperature to kind of increase even a little bit more than what is permissible, let's say, by the latest statistics, what could happen to life on Earth? And ultimately we must remember that the Earth does not need humans. We need the Earth.
Oh yeah, yeah. It
So,
has survived billions of years without us.
Exactly.
But then what you just said in this example, that
Mhm.
when you shift your small terrarium jar or a pot
Mhm.
and expose it to a climate change experience of sudden heat or whatever,
Right.
you actually see what happens to life there. It'll
Absolutely.
and you say that it will mimic what would
Yeah.
happen to us
Right.
when we really cross the tipping point, which I believe scientists are saying. Them some report that we just came out the other day
Mhm.
talked about the whole thing process getting accelerated far sooner than what we are thinking. I mean, yes, I mean we are. I mean, in Pune right now, there's nothing called spring. Vasant Panchami happened, Holi happened, but there was no spring. We jumped into 39 Celsius summer.
Yeah. Summer is.
So looks like the effect is already there. The summer is becoming hotter. The winters are getting colder. For all you know, we'll get more wetter rains.
It's unpredictable and unseasonal, and it throws things out of balance. And that's why I think it's important that kids learn this, but from practical, because they can read books as much as they want to, and they can see documentaries and stuff like that. But if they learn how to make a terrarium, they learn about so many concepts. Learn about groundwater, about evaporation, about precipitation, about condensation, about plant adaptations, about soil and layers, and the importance of charcoal. And ultimately, as we spoke about it, they learn about climate change. It's a practical. If they cannot keep it alive, then they have to figure out why it died, or what happened to it. And 90% of the times it's going to be because you've disturbed the balance so often that ultimately it gave up on you.
Then have you worked with kids?
I have once. I have to.
You did some workshops or something?
I did,
Okay,
and it was fun. But I hope that now when schools begin, it'll be on a larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
And children actually are more receptive to understanding these things, and sometimes show more, a better grasp on things than their parents. So,
No, I'm sure. I mean, learning by doing
right,
or learning through experience, as they say, is the best way to learn.
right,
So experience comes first, theory comes later.
yeah.
Is one way of looking at it. I'm sure if school kids are able to play and dabble with this, because it doesn't take much space, and I'm sure
Absolutely.
there are relatively inexpensive ways of doing this.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that is not only they will probably learn the art and science of ecology
Yeah, absolutely.
and environmental science, EVS, as a subject which is so dry in school the way they teach it.
Yeah.
I don't think kids would want to learn it, but this is the way they could learn it. And I don't know, I'm just curious here.
Mhm.
Does this cultivate a sense of empathy? I don't know. Has that happened to you as a terrarium maker?
Um,
Because when you're working with life and life form and seeing what is happening in the jar.
Yeah. I'd say a little extending empathy, going towards understanding the role of every little thing in nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's one thing where you understand what something else might be going through, but also understanding why everything is important. Simple things like, you might disregard this insect if you see it, in your playground when you're playing outside.
I wouldn't even notice its presence.
Notice its presence. But when you make a terrarium, you realize that there are two creatures basically. One is an isopod, and the other is called a springtail.
Okay.
They are known as the cleaners of nature. they feed on dead decaying matter and they feed on the fungal growth on that. Now, keeping fungus at bay is so important in nature because fungus can easily take over a lot of things in your terrarium as well. So these little creatures, they're microscopic in nature. So I would say that you develop a sense of understanding that every little thing is so important. Like when we say stop concretizing the entire ground, it's absolutely important because you're not just blocking rain from going in, you're also blocking things from below coming up.
Correct.
That is the important fact to look at here.
So the cleansers are not allowed to do their job.
Absolutely. You're denying them of all their let's say birthrights.
So what happens in your workshops? I mean, is it only for kids, or do you have people like of your age, my age coming?
Absolutely, everybody can come, and we've had corporate workshops as well.
Okay.
I mean, I've conducted corporate workshops as well. It's an exciting team building activity because apart from the science behind it, there's also, like you said, the art factor of it, right?
Correct.
And there's the planning factor of it. So when I tell people to close their eyes and imagine a landscape and try recreating that in your jar, they have to work as a team, right? If somebody wants to have their central feature as a hardscape of wood and somebody else wants stone, both are not going to be possible.
Correct. But then let me play a devil's advocate here, Sagar.
Right.
What you are holding out as an invitation is through this making a terrarium, and I would like to believe, though it could be a team sport and a team activity, let's say in the corporate setting,
Right.
but by and large it is a piece of art that I am creating for myself, by myself, in that sense.
Absolutely.
And it does require loads and loads of, can I use the word, attention and patience?
Absolutely. It's that time of the day when you keep your mobile aside and focus on doing something because that the survival of that thing depends completely on you.
So this is my devil's advocate question here, that in the world where we can't live away without our screens,
Right.
and there is so much of addiction to
Right.
all that is there, and I don't know whether good or bad, I don't want to go in that direction, but then when there is premium on my attention, and here is an art form which is expecting me to invest my attention on something which is very slow and laborious,
Right.
what is the return of investment here then?
It's the joy of seeing something you've created come to life. It's growing. What you've created is going to grow. That's something it's a brilliant feeling. I mean, I think once you come for one of my workshops,
I will.
It will be
I would love
a
to,
practical feeling then.
and no doubt about it. But
Right.
I'm trying to, wrap my head around how could this help someone who is battling issues around, I won't use the word mental health because it is too strong a word,
Right.
but everyday life is a stress,
Absolutely.
whatever it may be, even driving to work, coming back, spending 10-12 hours. Now that people are back at work, offices etc. have opened, we are kind of back to that whole life still, at sometimes working from home. How does this art, sounds that it might de-stress me? I don't know. Have you had any experiences, examples?
Absolutely. Especially during the pandemic and post-pandemic, a lot of people, including me, have developed a sense of anxiety. There's a little bit of paranoia, uncertainty about what's going to happen next,
Sure.
whatnot. And a lot of it comes from being constantly stuck to your devices.
Yes.
Because you're looking at the world, but you're looking at it through a device. You're not really experiencing it firsthand.
The app is controlling me.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have put it better. The app is controlling you. When you are building something,
Yes.
and there's something as a Goldilocks principle, right? When it's complicated but not too complicated, it's pretty but it's not too pretty, it's big but it's not too big, right? That's the Goldilocks principle that is used in a lot of marketing places where you want to make something achievable but not too achievable.
Correct.
Right? I think a terrarium falls into that category.
Okay.
Where your both hands are engaged, so you're going to need to put your phone away for sure. That's not something you can be addicted to at that
Away
point.
as in airplane mode or silent?
Keep it wherever, just keep it away from the glass jar because You can't be doing that. You have to
Sure.
hold things with your hands, right? Secondly, there is known theories about, why putting your hands in soil is therapeutic,
Yes.
right? The smell of soil, the texture of soil on your hands is very therapeutic. And I always say, do not wear gloves. Please do not wear gloves when you're gardening. It's something that will, in fact, keeping you too clean. Don't do that.
Does the soil know that I'm touching it?
I don't know. I wish I knew, but that's a very interesting question. That could be my next, thought of research now. But for now, I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So all these things, and also, when you make a terrarium,
Yeah.
there is a sense of control that you have over it, and especially in a world that is spinning out of control completely.
Yes.
I'm referring to the pandemic.
At least in the mind, yes.
Absolutely. And you don't know what's happening. This is one thing that keeps you sane simply because it is the thing that is totally under your control. You want to change the position of a stone inside, you go ahead and do it. You want to add another plant to it eventually, you go ahead and do it. You want to prune your plants inside, you can do that. When you're building it as well, you have a sense of accomplishment because you're building something can be completed within 3-4 hours of time, and once it's set, it will keep growing on its own. That's it.
All that is required is to keep the kiddo alive in me, right?
Absolutely. Be curious about things, researching, and it's a little bit of a hobby where there is so much to learn. You honestly, when you are working with plants, it's very interesting to see how they adapt, especially inside a terrarium. You'll see a plant with hard stem outside, in a pot. The same plant, if it's suitable to be put in a terrarium, which you will learn when you research plants that go into terrariums, it will develop a soft sort of feature to it, where the branches will become softer, the leaves will become smaller.
The plant morphs itself?
Absolutely, it adapts.
Okay.
It adapts,
Okay.
So the branches will become softer. They'll grow in a different way. It's very interesting, because it's placed in a new environment, high moisture, and lower light. So it grows differently.
No, there is this interesting principle called structure influences behavior, right?
Yeah.
So if you create a context and an environment,
Mm-hmm.
all the elements
Mhm.
within that context
Right.
ends up adapting to that environment and the context.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful, beautiful lesson of life that one can learn from Terrarium. But Sagar, let's kind of backtrack a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and look into the life of Sagar Dave as a software engineer who then pivoted
Right.
into the world of digital media.
Right. You remember there was a time in, I think, the last decade where every second boy, girl wanted to get into engineering, and because everyone was doing it,
Yes.
like a herd mentality almost. I would say that's how I got into it.
Part of the herd.
Absolutely. I mean, when you are there, all your friends want to do it, everybody
Sure.
wants to do it, and there's a short formula to it.
Yes.
You finish your 4 years, and I was a pretty good student.
Mhm.
So I think even if I was studying a different language, like even tomorrow if I was studying Greek, I would score a good decent amount to get into a good university and eventually get a good job.
Have you learned any foreign languages?
I have actually. In school we had German,
Okay.
and I in fact went to Germany on scholarship for a linguistic scholarship
How long was that?
for I think a month.
Okay.
And there were people from all over the world. Only two students from every country,
Okay.
and almost 36 countries were there.
Which part of Germany you lived?
So we were in the south first. We went to Bonn and Aachen and a little bit of Cologne. After that, we moved to Berlin and Potsdam. So a
you-
little bit of both.
So were you living in with some host parents then?
No, we were on this very exciting trip, I would say.
Mhm.
We would visit universities in the morning. In the afternoons, we would visit a museum or do something related to the city. And in the evenings, there would be a cultural program for us,
Mhm.
or like a free evening in the city. Do whatever you like.
How old were you then?
I was 15.
Oh yeah, pretty grown up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason for that particular scholarship was to expose us to German universities, German education systems, and stuff like that. It was sponsored by the German Education Ministry.
Yeah, I believe it is still going on.
It is.
I mean, there are some nieces of mine and
Mhm.
some nephews who've been there.
Right.
But let's go back to your
A software engineering.
engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think working in software was never my cup of tea, but
Okay.
I would say that doing engineering, which I crept through, let's say that, I crept through the 4 years, I think it has been a blessing in disguise because you look at things that way. We never had holidays, so I never really, we had holidays, but we call them preparatory leaves,
Correct.
PLs, right?
PLs, yeah.
So you studied in them and you balanced your study and fun in that aspect. And for us, unfortunately, college was 75% attendance, so we had to be in college.
Yeah. You have to show
And
up.
right, so it was a blessing in disguise because it gives you structure.
Correct.
And I only realized that when I made the move to media,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the media industry, I think now it's very, very structured, but in general, it's a very unstructured format of working. People don't reply to emails on times. But when you're in IT, we kind of follow this a very, very formalized way, very structured way of doing things. And I worked in IBM, so IBM was even more structured.
Yeah, I mean, I started my career way back in mid '80s with Wipro,
Right.
and that was a time when I don't mind. It's been many years back. I can probably stick my neck out and say this that it was all of 120 people, and Mr. Azim Premji used to be personally present
Yeah.
on the day one of the induction program.
In today's day and world, they call them startups.
Startups. And of course, we are talking about pre-email days, okay?
Right.
And one value that he insisted that each one of us as Wipro employee
Mhm.
follow rigorously to the T, that if any memo, we used to have
Memos.
come to you,
Mm.
they have to be responded in a max of 1 day,
Absolutely.
which is what probably your email is, which is within 24
Yeah,
hours,
I mean,
etc. But then let's go back to this media. When you talk of media industry,
Mhm.
which part of media are you talking about, which is so according to you not so disciplined?
I think all of media is not, but I mean, my opinion doesn't matter. Things have changed a lot in the past couple of years. I would still say, compared to more structured, businesses, I would say that media is still. It's also because of the nature of the beast, right? That is the nature of the beast.
Correct.
News media is what when I worked
Oh yeah,
in.
news media. You're talking about news
News
media.
media.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
worked in news media and
How long? How many years?
almost 7 years.
7 years. And what was the role you played there?
So I started off with social media strategist, which basically meant pushing out your news on social media. It was fairly new that time. This was 2012, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, I think Facebook came out in 2008 or something like that.
Correct,
And
correct.
so it had just been 3-4 years that all the social media platforms were exploding, and we could still exploit the algorithms a little bit to our favor. And that's where my role was made, actually, for that particular purpose, to push out news from our organization onto different platforms and make sure that it reaches a certain readership, viewership, things like that. A part of it was also to make news, format news in such a way that it's more consumable online.
Correct.
That was my job in media. And eventually I moved on to digital strategy and a little bit of branding and stuff like that. That was how my career went.
And you say that during weekdays you continue to be a digital strategist.
I do. Now I freelance. I've moved back to my city and I freelance.
What kind of work do you do there as a digital strategist today?
I help structure, I'll say in the education sort of realm, I help structure courses and stuff online. That's my current job. Still deals with content, still deals with media, and still deals with things that are digital. But the pace is a little slower. News is a very fast-paced environment. This is slower, structured, works a little bit more in my favor, I would say.
So then, Sagar, the little 2 or 3 year old toddler
Mm-hmm.
who would probably roll in the
Mhm.
gardens of his grandmother's garden,
Right.
who was so inquisitive and curious then.
Uh-huh.
I would like to believe creative too.
Right.
Has that strand continued even now?
Absolutely. I mean, I would not restrict the definition of creativity to art. I think creativity also includes the way in which you solve problems. And creative problem solving has always been a part of my life. It's very important to come up with solutions that are creative, have a little bit of fun during the day. And to be honest, I mean, I have never been able to finish my day happily unless I've done something creative. It could be as simple as making a coffee that is something different, a new recipe that you've seen, cooking, gardening, whether it's painting a wall in your house or working on a pet project. As I said, there's always something I like working on. So creativity has been, as you said, a constant in my life, Milind, and I hope it remains that way. I cannot go to sleep at night without knowing that okay, I have done this today, and that has been exciting.
But doesn't it expect you to stick your neck out into the realm of unknown then? And
Absolutely.
uncertain.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the first step towards, doing something creative is to be okay with failure and is to be okay with being in the unknown. See, what is it that makes us scared of being in the unknown, right? Because you don't know what is going to happen, right? That means indirectly you're also like looking at whether I'm going to succeed in doing this or not.
And if I fail, I'll be seen as a fool.
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, you're going to be a fool in whose eyes? Your eyes. It's fine, right? So you have to develop that entire mindset where you will have to do something if you want to succeed. And if you want to succeed, you're going to have to fail a couple of times. And it's absolutely fine. You can sit tight and do nothing at all in your life and be like, oh, good, I didn't fail. Yeah, but you haven't succeeded either, right? Because you have not done anything.
You know, this piece and the way you say it actually is reminding me about a quote that I read some time back. I don't know when and I don't know in which context.
Right.
But there is a very famous 19th and probably early 20th century French artist
Mm-hmm.
by the name Henri Matisse.
Uh-huh.
And he's known, apart from his paintings, a whole lot of quotes.
Right.
If you just Google
Yeah.
it, you'll get to see many. And one that caught my attention and it's kind of stayed with me now since I read it is he says that creativity takes courage.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And way he frames it is that in his view, creativity is actually the answering the call of imagination.
And imagination is what separates humans from animals, right? The ability to imagine something, to work on it, to allow it to manifest itself in different forms. Whether it's dance forms, whether it's performing arts in any other way, like singing, dancing, street art, and you have so much. There are so many avenues to express yourself, right? But if you're going to be marred by, if you're going to be, if your imagination is going to be impeded by other people's thoughts, that is where the courage lies, right? You cannot be bothered about what other people think, because it's art. You might like it, you may not like it. Like, I don't like a lot of things that I do, and it's absolutely fine, right? But you're learning so much in the process, and the outcome may or may not be something nice, and it may not be something nice to you, it might be great to someone else. And that is the beauty of art, right? It's how you interpret it, honestly. I mean, this is what I believe.
And you write as well, you said.
I write for a living, but I have also written a couple of short stories.
Okay.
One of them is also published in an anthology, but it's been almost 10 years to that now.
Okay.
I don't want to reference it, but it has been published, and I keep sending my stories for competitions and stuff like that. I do feel a little disappointed every time I don't get a reply from them.
Okay.
But that's fine, right? You get used to that as well. You get used to rejection, and it's absolutely fine because I like my stories. It doesn't matter if somebody else likes them or not.
So when you hear the call,
Mm-hmm.
when I hear the call is not literal sense, but then when there is this urge to create,
Right.
is it akin to a call for an adventure?
I think it's my mind telling me to kind of, block things that are distracting me, get into the flow, do something that makes you feel so relaxed at the end of it that you have to do it. It's like an addiction. To be really honest, it takes me a little while to get into the groove of things, but once I'm in it, I can be awake till 2, 3 in the morning doing it. and on a regular day, I am off to bed by 10. I'm an early to bed, early to rise kind of person. I will not, even if I'm out for dinner, I will get up and leave the table and say, boss, I need to go home. I need my night's sleep.
You know, somehow this is also relating, giving me in my mind this whole notion of joy and ecstasy,
Okay.
which probably creative people like you may be experiencing. I don't know. Is there a joy and ecstasy in doing terrariums, for example?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when you look at it as an art form, yes. And from a therapeutic point of view, it is very, very cathartic to sit there, design your own landscape, do it. Look at it every single day saying, oh, does this leaf look yellow? If it looks yellow, why is it yellow? Let's Google it, let's figure it out. It's a good rabbit hole. Go down it. Explore it is what I would say. It's a good one.
Love the way you say it. You've termed it a rabbit hole, but a good one to be in.
Yeah.
And I think what a beautiful note to kind of bring the curtains down on this conversation, that this whole journey of creativity, which you are living through your passion for terrariums, is a beautiful, beautiful journey down the rabbit hole. Not to discover anything, but simply enjoying being in the rabbit hole.
To enjoy the fall. I mean,
and let it take you where it wants you to.
absolutely. Lose control for a little bit, land the way you need to land. We'll see how things happen.
Wonderful. So on this note, I think this is leaving me with a bit of high, but leaving me with some bit of questions too, because all said and done, this whole Wings podcast is also an experience Asha and I are living through as our own adventure
Right.
in creating a platform for celebrating stories of India's youth.
Right.
And in many ways we don't know, it seems like a journey down the rabbit hole, but a good one to be in.
Absolutely.
And happy to discover beautiful stories like yours. So just want to say thank you very much for coming over for this conversation, and to have this, share yourself. I won't say the work, but sharing much of yourself. So I think I have enjoyed every moment of this conversation. I don't know how it has been for you. So as we end the conversation, just let me ask you, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
It's been
What
great.
are you saying to yourself?
It's been great talking to you, Milind, and to be honest, as you said, the conversation was free flowing. It was fun, and I would say, welcome to my rabbit hole. Hopefully, we meet somewhere in between and exchange a few notes about how your adventure has been and how my adventure has been so far.
Sure.
And apart from that, as I said, like you said, I mean, like a part of us will remain in each other forever, in the sense that
Yes.
what I've shared today might remain with you, and
Of course.
what I learned from you will remain with me. And I think that's the beauty of conversations. And thank you for hosting me today.
Absolutely. And I think the whole idea is to discover the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Right.
And probably I am probably thinking through what are the extraordinary things that I have gathered, not just from you, but about myself too, about my own impatience with being a creative and a courageous person. So thank you very much once again. Wish
Thank
you
you
good
so
luck.
much. Thank you.
And have a great life ahead.
Thank you so much, Milind.
Bye-bye. Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75@gmail.com. Thank you.